morning, everybody. Welcome to Clemson's Other Game Day. The stories off the gridiron for the Tigers. If you couldn't tell from the title, we're going to be talking all things Clemson sports that aren't football. We're going to be talking soccer, volleyball, basketball, baseball, whatever's in season, whatever's out of season. We're going to be talking a lot of things Clemson sports. I'm Toby Corson, alongside Griffin Barfield. Thank him for being here. He'll hopefully be here most of the time. Might mix in some other guests as we go along, but without further ado, let's jump right in. Clemson men's soccer. They're coming off a draw to Holy Cross 2-2 last night. What were your thoughts on that game? Obviously not the result the Tigers wanted.
Yeah, but again, you're seeing a lot of success off the set pieces. Scoring off a corner, Jeron Gerbet has been incredible in terms of how he's been able to put free kicks in the net, able to put corner kicks in the net. But it's just a tough loss. Obviously, being a top 25 team and the reigning national championship, you want to win every game, and head coach Mike Noonan knows that. But all that matters is you're focusing on the Wake Forest this weekend, which should be a good game.
Yeah, if you go back and look at that game, the two goals that Holy Cross scored were in the opposite ends of the half. First 2 minutes in the game, and then I think the last 2 minutes of the game as well, or maybe last 5 minutes. And they were random mishaps. It was the back line, Ndima tried to clear out a goal kick, basically. He was trying to clear the ball out. It got loose. He was off his line. They shot it, grabbed the rebound, and it went in the goal. It was unfortunate. Tigers bounced back. They had all the possession. I think they had 70% of the possession in this match, which is not... You don't want to tie a game when you have 70% of the possession, but you have to take some good things away. You have to be like, hey, this is soccer. Sometimes you don't find the back of the net as much as you'd like. Sometimes weird things happen, and this was a combination of all those things. Also, what you have to look at is they've started off the season much better than last season. Last year, they got off to a rocky start. This year, they do have the loss to Stanford, but they're a top 5 team in the country, and that was a hard-fought battle, but they bounced back. They dominated Loyola. They beat Boston College. They're off to a good start. This team just needs to find some things. Who is your X factor moving forward? Because there are a lot of new pieces on this team. Last year, they lost Usman Silla, Gael Gerbet, Popmar Boy, Brandon Parrish. All of these guys were key pieces on last year's team that they don't have now, and they're kind of looking for that next guy to step up. You mentioned Jeron Gerbet, but who else do you see being an X factor on this team moving forward?
Well, otherwise, with Gerbet on the set pieces, I really like Ransford Gian. I really think that up top kind of is getting settled. The back line is going to get settled as the year goes on, and Ndema is going to be Ndema. It's going to be really on Ransford Gian, who's really playing that number 10 center attacking mid position. I really think if he's able to send those outlet passes that Gerbet's been pretty much able to do, and Ransford even able to put some goals in by himself, he only has 1 assist. I know he's settling in nicely, but this was a National Player of the Year for 3 years in a row. He was the New Jersey State Player of the Year for 4 years in a row as well. He has the talent. He has the size. He is incredibly exciting to watch. If you haven't seen him, you really can't miss him. He's electric on the ball. I really think he'll start getting some goals in as the season goes on, and he could be a huge figure in terms of how Clemson approaches this postseason.
Yeah, you might miss him if he were in a crowd because he's not the biggest guy on the pitch. He is almost always the smallest guy on the pitch, but man, can he do things with the ball at his feet. Okay. When he has the ball at his feet, that ball could do anything and go anywhere, and he knows exactly what's going on. His touch is probably one of the best touches I've ever seen.
I agree.
Which is saying a lot because there's a lot of good soccer players that have come through Clemson. But he's really exciting. He's obviously a freshman, still settling in. And I think as the season progresses, you're going to see him do a lot more things and be a huge X factor for these Tigers. With that, moving on to Wake Forest next. Wake Forest is not as good of a team as some of the teams that the Tigers have seen so far. What's your prediction heading into this game?
I think the home field advantage is huge, especially for Clemson. Like you said, Wake Forest did lose a lot of those big pieces. Garrison Tubbs was a MAC, Herman Winter. But Clemson are trying to bring back as well. I think, again, I'm always going to support Clemson, whatever they do. I really think that they will come out on the right foot, especially with that Stanford loss, especially with this Holy Cross loss. They want to get back in the win column. I think they win on Friday.
I would agree with that. You know, Wake Forest is led by Babkar Niang, if I said that correctly, from Dakar, Senegal, a place that Clemson is very familiar with, having a lot of pieces. I think Popmar Boy was from there last year, just right there. So they're familiar with talent that is from around that area. And then junior midfielder Cooper Flax is their second leading scorer. They're both in the midfield. They control a lot of the midfield. But if the Tigers midfielders, Jeron Gerbet and Ransford Gian, can step up and control that midfield ahead of them, I think they're going to have a lot of success in that match. With that, we're going to move on to our next segment, Clemson men's basketball. We are seeing a completely new team here. I know we just talked about soccer losing some pieces, but this Brad Brownell has done massive moves in the transfer portal because we lost a lot of players. So what have you seen from him? What do you think we're going to see from this team moving forward?
I think you're going to see a lot of different stuff. First of all, no PJ Hall for the first time in 4 years, which is huge. But for me, I really think they're going to centralize this team around Chase Hunter. I think that he's going to be your guy going forward. Ian Shefflin in the post. He got a lot better in terms of how his post game is, his post scoring, and he's just an absolute unit on defense. It's going to be a lot in terms of X factors. It's going to be a lot about how these transfers perform. I mean, Victor Lakin is now going to be your center. How is he going to perform? He doesn't have that three-point shot that PJ had, but that could be a little different. Miles Foster, someone I'm really excited about. He's kind of been all over the place from Monmouth, Illinois State. He's a New York kid. He should be exciting to watch, especially with his experience. And then the other guy, Jaden Zachary, Boston College. He has incredible efficiency, knows when to give the ball away, led Boston College in assists last year, knows how to shoot the ball, was a 40% three-point shooter. So all these pieces are going to have to gel together, which I think they will.
Yeah, you mentioned all of those names. Let's just go back over exactly what's happened in the transfer portal for anyone who's listening who doesn't know. So we lost Josh Beadle. He went to Boston College in basically a trade with Jaden Zachary. And
essentially,
I'm not complaining. I think we won that trade.
Me neither.
Beadle was a bench guy, maybe a spark off the bench here or there. But Zachary was a starter. He was the third leading scorer on that Boston College team. And he absolutely torched Clemson in the ACC tournament there when we lost. Big upset against Boston College. So I think he's going to be a huge addition to this team. And be very helpful for Chase Hunter not having to do everything in the guard position. We lost R.J. Godfrey. He is now at Georgia. That was a surprise loss for this Tigers team. A lot of people were not happy with Brad Brownell after that, thinking it was his fault. But we made a run in the tournament. Brad Brownell has a lot of good things going for him right now. That loss does hurt, but he honestly, he had some good moments in that postseason run. But he wasn't a huge piece of this team, and I think with these other transfers that you mentioned, Lakin, I think we're going to be just fine without him. We're not going to miss his presence. Jack Clark is a big piece that we're going to miss. He went to VCU for his 7th year. I don't even know how he's at that point right now. But he went to VCU. He was a huge proponent on the defensive end for Clemson. I don't know how we're going to make up for him. I don't really see any of these transfers filling in that defensive dominant role. And I think Brad Brownell is going to have to shift around kind of his play style on that end without Jack Clark. Other key departures, PJ Hall, Joe Girard, three-point shooting.
Huge.
That's going to be huge. He was just clutch. Whenever you needed him, he made the shot. But yeah, Christian Reeves, a center from Duke. I don't know. I'm a little bit wary of him this year, but I think he's going to be a lot of fun for this team moving forward. He dealt with injuries last year, but Duke recruited him.
5-star.
If Duke's recruiting you, if you're a 5-star, you're going to be good. I'm excited to see. He's 7'1" too. That's insane for a basketball player.
Absolutely.
Clemson brought in 7'1" and Christian Reeves, Miles Foster from Illinois State, 6'7", and then Victor Lakin, 6'11". That's a lot of size. And then you have Chauncey Wiggins, who's I believe 6'11" as well. There's a lot of size on this roster. Now, it's a lot of size with speed. It's not going to be your block guy. I think Shefflin's going to be the main guy on the block. But these guys, it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a new dynamic from this team. So with that, how do you think this team is going to play? What do you think the dynamic of this team is going to be? How is this team going to move forward? Are they going to gel immediately? Do you think it's going to take some time? And then what are your postseason expectations for this team?
I mean, for me, I think that you're obviously going to see growing pains at first with how PJ Hall kind of revolutionized that offense playing through him, especially up top. So it will be a little bit interesting. I do think Victor Lakin will be able to settle in nicely towards down the stretch of the season. He did great on defense with Cincinnati. In terms of how the backcourt's going to look, I think you're going to see the same old stuff. I think Chase Hunter, you're going to see a lot more ball efficiency. The ball's going to be in his hands a lot more than it was last year with Joe. Jaden Zachary, I think, will have the ball good bit, shoot when he needs, that type thing. Shefflin, I think, will have a lot more. He'll shoot the ball a lot more, which I think could be huge. But for me, I think that they're going to get hot like they did last year, like they did 2 years ago where they didn't make the tournament. I think they'll be okay. I think they'll settle into that NCAA tournament, maybe on the at-large bids. But I think this team has a lot from start to finish, especially off the bench, too. We're talking about a guy like Jake Heedbreder, didn't play last year. He's a three-point shooter. He shot 40% from three at Air Force. This is a guy who could be a spark plug off the bench instead of a guy like Josh Beadle. So for me, I think you're going to have these players that are going to play well, and I think Clemson's going to sneak into the NCAA tournament.
I like that. And then you also have to look at the freshmen that we brought in. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of freshmen do not play, but Ace Buckner, 3-star combo guard, son of former Clemson player Greg Buckner. He's got a really good playmaking ability. He's a very good facilitator. It'll be interesting to see how he develops, see if he gets any playing time. Del Jones, 6'2", 3-star combo guard. Again, he played for Team Durant in the EYBL circuit. He's a very good player. He can do a lot of things with the basketball in his hands. I'll be curious to see if he gets any playing time. And then Dallas Thomas. I think this is our biggest pickup this year. Yeah. He's a 4-star, 6'9", great rebounder. He can go after it. I think he's going to be a little bit like Shefflin. Different play style, but he just goes after those boards. He attacks them. And then Jackson Roberts was a hidden pickup that not a lot of people knew about. I don't think he's going to play much, but he is 6'11", 250, and he's just an intimidator. He could be an intimidator, an enforcer. I don't think he's going to play much. He has a 14-inch vertical, but he's just another freshman that we brought in that who knows what Brad Brownell could do with him. Brad is surprisingly good that a lot of people don't see at developing players.
Right.
PJ, homegrown talent. Obviously, one of the biggest talents coming out of high school, but he developed him to grow in different facets of the game that he did not have beforehand. So this team does need to gel. There's going to be some new leadership. We don't know who's going to step up and be those playmakers quite yet, but there's a lot of different options for Brad Brownell to turn to. It's just going to be what he sees in the offseason. On that same note, Clemson women's basketball, it also has a new leader. This time it's in their head coach with Sean Poppy. A lot of people transferred out after the old coach left, but Sean Poppy brought in a lot of new transfers. What do you think this women's basketball team is going to look like moving forward after having been so bad almost in the past few years and not having really a fan base? What do you think Sean Poppy is going to do to turn around this program?
Well, he's been really big on advocating for the team. Big on Twitter, big attending different athletic events for Clemson. He really wants this team to succeed, and I think this team is going to gel a lot quicker than people think. And that's mostly because Poppy brought a lot of people from Chattanooga. And that team, they were an NCAA tournament bid. They had a couple players, first team, defensive player of the year, which I thought was huge. So this team will gel quicker than you think. And they have talent. I forgot her name, Alabama. I do not know.
I'm blanking on it.
She played at Alabama.
Yep.
But I think that the talent is there. And I think that Poppy's really going to gel this group and form a culture for women's basketball.
Yeah, like you said, Amanda Butler, after she left this team, took a lot of players with her.
Mm-hmm.
Poppy brought a lot of players with him. But he did say that he doesn't want to use the transfer portal as a quick fix. He's in this for the long run. He thinks Clemson's a hidden gem when it comes to women's basketball. Can be a good program. I'm going to point out two players. Anya Poole. Poole started 74 games for North Carolina last year in their tournament run. A huge part of 3 NCAA tournament teams. She's a huge pickup. Just for some veteran presence on this team, a senior, she knows what she's doing. And then Addie Porter, one of those girls, he brought from Chattanooga, part of the 2 NCAA tournament teams, and was the starting point guard on that team. That's leadership right there that understands how this coach works, that understands what he's going to expect, and can bring that to the rest of the team. I think this team could have a lot of fun, maybe sneaks into the NCAA tournament, could be a dark horse. Poppy's had a ton of success. He had a 48-18 record at Chattanooga after they were one of the worst teams in their conference. And then he turned around and won the SoCal division the next year, the first year he was that coach. So who knows what can happen. The ACC is a lot more difficult, but I'm very excited for what he does for this team. All right, welcome to our little quiz section of the show called On the Spot, where I'm going to put Griffin or whoever is the guest, hopefully most of the time it's Griffin, on the spot with a Clemson trivia question. This one is going to be soccer related. So Griffin, how many times have both Clemson men's and women's soccer made the NCAA tournament in the same year? That your options are A, 10 times, B, 13 times, C, 16 times, or D, 18 times.
I mean, that's tough first and foremost because both these schools have had, or both these teams, I should say, have had the success. I'm going to go ahead and say 16. I'm going to go ahead and say 16.
16, you were close. It was 18 times.
18.
That is one of the most in the history of soccer for both programs making it. I don't know the exact number, but it is high up there, and it was a lot in the 90s. They had a stretch where they had 10 years straight, both making it, I believe. They were absolutely dominant, and they're bringing that dominance back. Obviously, there's a lot more teams now, a lot more parity in college soccer, but 18 times is impressive for both of them to make it in the same year. That's if you're a soccer fan, you want to come to Clemson because, boy, do we have some soccer teams. And with that, we're going to move right into our other soccer team, Clemson women's soccer. They have not had the start they wanted. They just dropped their first conference game against Virginia Tech 3-2, and they drew with South Carolina and Charlotte recently. They are 4-2-2 with a bad loss early to Auburn. They lost 4-0 in their opening game, but they're starting to find a groove. They've won 3 games. They're figuring it out. What have you seen from this team?
I think you're investing in your youth. If you're women's head coach Eddie Radwanski, you lost most of your starting lineup that took them to the College Cup. So it's a lot of growing pains. It's a lot of transfers. It's a lot of new players. And you've seen that a lot of the youth has been leading the team in scoring, assisting, points as a whole. And I know that we'll get to that in a little bit. So as long as you're investing in your youth, I think that you're going to gel at the end of the season, especially with veteran players like Megan Bornkamp and Sydney Monerick. I really think that you're going to start seeing, those wins fall, especially in that latter half of the year.
Yeah, you mentioned those pieces that they lost. Hal Hirschfeld, McKenna Morris, Hallie Makiewicz, and Caroline Conti are all playing in the National Women's Soccer League now, and they were all on that roster. They did have those returners, Megan Bornkamp, Danny Davis. Those are big pieces that are starters, that were starters on last year's team that had the experience, but they can't do everything. But stepping up, there's been some fresh new faces. Freshman Kendall Bodak leads the team, or is tied for the most points on the team with 6. She's the spark that this team needed. She's just 5'2", but she plays a lot bigger than that. She is everywhere on the pitch, and she is a scoring threat. What other faces have you seen that have stepped up in this team?
I mean, looking kind of down the line, another sophomore is Jenna Tobia. She was big freshman last year. She started as a midfielder, and when I was able to watch that team, she was able to make a lot of plays, especially with an older squad. That's very rare to see. Tatum Short on the wing, always dangerous. She plays on the left or right wing, I believe. Big assister last year, and she started off a little bit slower this year, but I really expect her to have, once again, towards that latter half of the year, you'll start seeing those assists and those goals fall in.
Yeah, and Radwanski is no stranger to the transfer portal either. He is very good at using it. They brought in sophomore transfer Christian Brathwaite from Georgia, who's tied for the most goals on the team with Kendall Bodak. Another graduate transfer is Cam Pickett. And now she has not scored a lot of points on this team, but she is fierce. She plays out on the right wing, and she is everywhere on the field. She's a great defender. She doesn't let many people by her. If the ball comes flying down that right side of the pitch, she is there. She is stopping the ball, and she is forcing them to the outside still and causing the defense to get set and forcing a tough cross into the middle or forcing them to play it back out. And then on the attacking end, she is fast. She can get by you in an instant. She'll send a ball in. Now, she has 1 assist on the year, but she is a huge piece of this team that is going to be, as long as she stays healthy, annoying for a lot of teams to deal with, because you still have to deal with that center mid, Hal Hirschfeld, Danny Davis, and then you throw her on the outside as well, and that is a midfield that is tough to keep up with. Along with that, there are some other pieces that this team needs to look at. The defense has not been great for this team. It's young. They're coming up together. They're learning. How do you think this team needs to attack their next upcoming games, having Duke come to them, a top 5 team in the country currently? What do you think they need to do to keep them off the board?
I really think that, Duke has scored 20 goals in their last 5 games. And with Clemson and the games that they've been in a 3-1 win over Campbell, 1-1 South Carolina, 0-0 Charlotte. This team likes to play in close games. They have been on the bad foot. They lost to Virginia Tech 2-1 last Thursday at Riggs. I really think that you just need to score that first goal and hold on. I really think so, because this Duke team, very attacking. Like the last said. So I think that you're going to have to maybe get those counterattacks in. Maybe if Duke brings everybody up, you get the counterattack and score, because like we said, we know the stars that can score and they could produce here. I really think that Duke is probably going to be one of the best teams that they've played this year, otherwise than Florida State. So I think that they just need to find their chance and they have to make most of it.
What's your score prediction?
For me, I really think I think Duke is a very, very good team. I think Clemson potentially could win this game in the future, but I think Duke win with where the games are at right now. I got 3-1 Duke.
You took my prediction. I'm going 3-1 Duke as well. Unfortunately, look, yeah. Duke is 5-1. Their only loss came in Columbus to Ohio State. They beat number 2 UNC. Their firepower is led by Maggie Graham, who's one of the best players in the country right now. And I think it's just going to be too much for this young, gelling Tigers team. They are playing at home. Historic Riggs is a tough place to play. So if there's a good crowd out there on Thursday night, they might be able to use that momentum. But I still think even if they do, they're going to need a lot of things to go their way, which is going to be tough. So before we get into our final segment, we're going to do a snap take. This is a segment I'm going to surprise you with each week and get your take on a little bit of an unknown thought. So this week's take, Would you rather be Brad Brownell trying to rebuild your team and the unknown of what's to come, or be Erik Bakich, who's still trying to rebuild a little bit of his team, but be more established and have lofty expectations heading into the next season?
I think it's tough for me. I'd rather be Erik Bakich currently. Almost all of the backing is behind him after especially being listened to by other coaches, especially in the SEC. That was kind of a whole rumor after the whole Florida thing after the NCAA tournament. But I think the whole school is behind him. I think, and you have the pieces. Cam Canarella is a big one. You use the transfer portal really well, and you've seen that time and time again, especially with the pitching and the infielders and the experience that he's gotten. I really think there is no hot seat for Erik Bakich. I think that he is one of the best coaches in college baseball, and I really think that I'd much rather be him than a guy like Brad Brownell, where he's constantly on the hot seat if you don't make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's a little bit too much unknown with that basketball team right now.
Yeah.
But if Erik Bakich does not make the NCAA tournament this year, who knows what happens? I think they will. I think, again, he is one of the best coaches in college baseball. But you never know what can happen when you're rebuilding a couple pieces. You got to find some starters for Friday and Saturday. You have your Sunday starter in
Aiden Knock.
Aiden Knock. Thank you. But with that, we're going to head to the Tiger Rundown as we close out the show, starting off with volleyball. This past week, the Tigers swept the Black and Gold Invitational, and in their final match, the Clemson Tigers defeated the Winthrop Eagles in 4 sets. Junior Mia McGrath contributed 11.5 points with 9 kills, 3 blocks, and 1 ace. Your thoughts on the tournament?
I mean, 3 straight wins for him. App State, Wofford, Winthrop. Huge week going into the end of this week. Friday, you have South Carolina, Kennesaw State on Thursday, so it should be a fun weekend for them.
Yeah. They're 6-2. They're off to a good start.
Absolutely. Moving to women's tennis. Clemson competed in the Debbie Southern Furman Fall Classic. They split due to weather. Freshman Candelia Yakora secured her first collegiate win, winning 6-1, 6-1 against Mississippi State.
Yeah, senior Sophia Hatton helped lead the team in one of their first matches. Up next, they will go Amelia Smechkalova. I'm so sorry for that name. I will get better at that. Will compete in the San Rafael Women's 35 tournament in California from September 16th to 22nd. That's pretty cool. That's an exciting tournament for her to go play in. And heading on to golf, the men's team got off to a challenging start in their inaugural tournament at the Inverness Intercollegiate, finishing 12th overall. They brought 2 freshmen, which is the first time they've ever done that, to an opening tournament. Colin Salema, one of the first freshmen, led the newcomers with placing 50th with a 216 on the tournament. Not great, not terrible. And then Rich Willis finished with a 221. But, it wasn't their best tournament, but you move on, you build from there. It was a strong field. 9 of the 12 teams were in the NCAA tournament last year. They'll build from there.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And you're going into San Antonio, Texas this week. Should be exciting, hopefully bounce back, but it's a great foundation to build with the younger guys.
Yep, and on the women's side, they competed at the Annika Intercollegiate, tying for 9th place. Ivy Schulz and Isabel Rawl led a late charge, both shooting 1 under on the back 9 for the final day to push them up the leaderboard a little bit. They will next head out to the Mason Rudolph Championship in Nashville, September 20th to 22nd.
Yep, playing Vanderbilt is hosting, so they'll have another group of tough schools, so it should be a good competition for them.
Yeah. Well, with that is the end of our inaugural podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. We hope to bring you more Clemson sports action on stories that aren't necessarily being talked about right now. We will get better at getting to know these teams as we move on. Got to work on some names. But with that, Toby Corson, Griffin Barfield, signing off from Clemson's Other Game Day podcast.